Well, hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Wednesday. And as always, I'm here with my good friend, Kenneth Edmonds. How are you, Ken?
I am, but I seem to be having some technical issues. Let me drop out and work on that, and I'll be right back.
All right. And for those that don't know, this is one of Ken's favorite things is where are you watching from? And Ken right now is on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. And for those that tune into our show often, they know that he does that frequently. And we were actually just talking about technology and its advances just before we got started live on the show here. And today we're going to talk compensation. We're at the end of the year. This is a big time for anyone in the sales world to try and get things done. And obviously sales reps and, how they get compensated is a big part of, that push and how's it changing, right? And I'm just going to see, looks like Ken, you're back there. Testing. You still there?
I am still here. How are things now? Are they better?
Yeah, we can hear you great. And without further ado, obviously you can listen to Ken and I talk about compensation. I will say that we are lucky enough because we do work with a lot of dealers on sort of modernizing comp plans for different ways to deliver managed print, but it's always best to make sure that you have some balance. And so for that today, we've brought in one of my favorite dealers. And Mike McCurdy, how are you, buddy?
Doing very well.
Yeah, really appreciate you joining us on this Wednesday morning. And obviously your organization is probably pretty busy getting ready for year end, so much appreciated.
No problem. Excited to be here.
Nice. And look, we've got Greg Walters in. Greg is watching us from Fort Myers, Florida. And Mike, where are you right now?
I am in Smithfield, Utah.
Nice. Got to get myself back out to Utah for some skiing one of these years. That's one of my favorite places. And
it's pretty good right now.
We were talking about technology earlier, Mike, and you can see here Greg Walters is joining us from two technology platforms at the same time, which is pretty typical for him. There he is on YouTube and the other one on LinkedIn. Yeah, so for everyone out there that is watching and tuned in, let us know where you're watching from. Ken loves to hear that. And which part of the ocean are you on right now, Ken?
I am at dock in Puerto Rico right now in San Juan.
I love it. All right, so let's get into the first topic. And I think what we need to do, because we're coming up on the year end, did you guys know that this is the year of the tiger? That it's actually coming to an end in January, late January, I think, soon after my birthday. And what most people don't realize is that in the the way that the Chinese do this is that the year that you're in is actually not necessarily a good thing, right? So for the year of the tiger, it's a challenging year, right? And we've had challenging years. It's been like the year of the tiger for all of us, I would say, for the last 2 years, right? So maybe one of the first things I'll pop up there is just looking at kind of the traditional, copy or rep compensation that we've been using for years prior to this, pandemic, and what some of the thoughts are. So, Mike, like, what do you think? Is it still a good time to, pay just on, gross margin or gross profit and get on with it?
Certainly I do. Like any product, office equipment dealers are paying on, their GP, and that's pretty typical probably for most widgets that are sold in the world. So I don't think that it's certainly necessarily something that's going to go away or should go away. But I think you can get creative at how you handle your compensation and how you handle things with your reps and being realistic with, today's realities versus 20 years ago in the industry. For sure.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of happy sales reps out there right now. It seems everyone that I speak to, we're starting to get stuff back in the marketplace, and they're hitting record numbers. I know for lots of people say that for November, and December is looking pretty good as well, right? So
yeah, very much so. It's been a nice change of pace.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's really cool is that when you kind of look at, I feel finally that we're on the other side of this thing, right? That we're actually looking towards, kind of building, the business that we're going to be looking forward to next year. And it's certainly a much different, picture, right? And Ken, what are your thoughts? I know that obviously on the compensation side, it's not just the sales reps, right? That there are other considerations, right? So I'm just going to put this up: service compensation. And Mike, maybe we'll get your 2 cents on this too. And Ken, if you want to start that one.
Okay, and hopefully my audio holds up. But the one challenge I see, and I think this affects both sales and service, is it's getting harder to get the employees we want and we need. I talk to service managers all the time, and very consistently, they're getting ghosted on jobs. They get somebody that they want to hire, they make an offer, and then it's crickets. And I think that there are a couple of factors that are involved. I think it's the changing employee dynamic. I think that as we bring younger generations in, they expect things to be different. They want things to be different. And I think the other challenge is that in our industry, and for those that have listened to me, I have a strong opinion on this, is that too often we don't get our compensation aligned with the results we want. In service, there were some consultants that were really big about paying technicians for calls per day. But that was the most counterproductive thing you could do because it created behaviors that hurt the dealership. And I think we see that, still those wrong philosophies are we don't put the carrot where it's really needed to be, I guess is a good way to say it.
Sure. And from a service perspective, what kind of things are you doing, Mike? Like, have things changed at all, or is it, kind of business as usual?
They actually have changed. Over the years, we've tried different models and different types of things. I agree with Ken that things have changed, and I agree that some of the models the model he pointed out specifically is damaging and has been damaging in the past because it does change behaviors in a negative way. For us, we actually just barely changed our compensation. We have left the bonus structure, which was based around activity, calls per day, parts used, all that kind of stuff. And we actually just tossed it out completely. We literally just did that effective December 1st.
Oh, wow.
And we took the average bonuses that the guys were getting for the last 12 months and translated that into an hourly dollar amount. And we just gave that to them and said, look, you guys are responsible. You're very well maintained. They all get about the same bonus anyways. They've learned how to figure it out. They've learned how to manipulate it, get the desired result. But we just decided, you know what? Let's just compensate you fairly. We don't micromanage. You guys go do your thing. And it was taking us literally hours to do these reports, no less. So it saved us a lot of time on our side. Almost all the techs were like, that's great. They don't have to think about it. They got a boost in their hourly rate. It does cost us a little more because with overtime, you got a higher hourly rate. You're going to pay a little bit more in overtime, but that's okay. But that's what we just did. We don't even participate in those things anymore as of the 1st of December. And we're pretty excited about it. See how it goes.
Well, that's pretty neat. That's pretty timely, right? To hear that, you're doing something. Now, Ken is very passionate about this because the service side is what he does, right? And certainly I like what you say about this idea of just being able to manage those old-fashioned compensation plans, right? Trying to just the administration of being able to keep track of that and making sure it's fair. And that costs money, right? That's one of those things when you add it up, for people hours, they could be doing something else. And I have actually built calculators based around that to show, what kind of money that actually looks like, because I think it's hard for people. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Eric Crump says, great to see Mike on the Level Up show. And great to see you out there, Mr. Crump.
And let me interject this. I am a fan of putting a carrot based on the metric that really matters in service, and that is copies between calls. And that becomes then a little easier to manage because when you analyze the cost, when you look at where dealerships bleed money, it is that the technicians don't focus enough time and energy on building that copies between visits. And that's why I'm a fan of that. And, moving away from where you did, Mike, was a great choice because like I said, any of the activity-based just drives. I took over a dealership, and I'll tell this story. I took over a dealership that had been on one of those models, and my techs, when I walked into the dealership as service manager, I had 12 techs, 2 got left immediately, and I wound up with 10 techs and 100 open calls. And that when I started trying to fix it, what I found was they were doing the same calls over and over and over again. They were based on bonused on low parts usage and high number of calls per day. Well, guess what? Low parts usage causes high number of calls per day. High number of calls per day causes them to go faster and do a worse job. And so the techs were making a lot of money and the dealership was bleeding out the nose. And so we've got to change that mindset. And that's why I'm a fan of focus on copies between visits and do everything you can to drive that number. And then everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah, there's a simplicity and elegance in that, right? And, this idea, I love the idea of, we trust you, what you've been doing, how to, your job better than, anyone else. We'll give you a bump in your, pay and go get them, right? Like that's got to feel good, like where you're not worried about that. And I think that if you have the right people in place, I've often heard this with even sales reps, right? Even like driving sales behavior. If you have the right people in place, they'll do the right job, right? And oftentimes I know that compensation is important, but sometimes we think that it's the do all end all of what motivates, people to do good work. And I don't necessarily think that's true, right?
Yeah, I think there's a level in there that has to do with making sure the customer's taken care of. And we thought a lot about what Kenneth said as we were working through this process. But at the end of the day, we also didn't want to strip our customer experience away. And there's just too many ways where when you're focusing on different types of things where we felt like, we've entrusted our technicians. They've all been with us for 6 to 25 years. We have almost no turnover. And they're just instructed to give the customer the best possible experience. And unfortunately, sometimes that costs money. And so that's kind of where, if it wasn't for that piece, Ken, we were, focused on, how do you create that carrot? And it was just like, what? At the end of the day, we want our customers taken care of because there's a lot more we provide than just office equipment that we have access to if they have that experience. So
I love it.
So I do like your approach. And I think that does make a big difference in a lot of dealerships. There are dealerships that if they don't manage that, lose a lot of money.
Yeah. And hey, welcome, Mr. Cozzens. How are you, sir?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Nice to see second Michael on the call. So it's the Michael day, and great to see you. Which part of the world are you in?
Right now, I'm in the Northeast.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you joining on short notice. And today we're just talking about everything compensation, right? So we've just finished talking sort of about service compensation, driving kind of the right behavior. And I'd be curious from your perspective, Michael, that obviously having a big national operation, right? Have you seen changes in how you approach service compensation, given the way the world's changed, or is it pretty much business as usual?
Service compensation, or you talk about managed IT services?
It could be anything. We're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
right now.
that's the tough part, Wes. As you know, I mean, we obviously continue to want to see our print and imaging sales be as strong as they've always been. So you got to be careful you don't take the eyes off the 8 ball. Yeah. But we all know that salespeople, which are always our favorite types of people, those guys and gals have to be compensated in correlation with what the company's expectations are. And right now, we have a big push, just like everybody else, to push the managed reoccurring service revenues. And, it's tough. Our compensation programs are moving targets as anybody else because you want to focus where you want the sales efforts. But you know what? We want to be digital technology solution providers. So we're doing the same thing everybody else is. We're just trying to see where that sweet spot is. You got to continue to compensate people accordingly for the business that they're creating. But you also don't want to lose sight with where you need to go. So for us, we have programs for our print salespeople that give them compensation on the IT services. It's not as lucrative it's not as lucrative as the folks that are just concentrating on managed IT services, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And it's kind of fun when you talk about this idea that we have to grow in new directions, right? And Mike McCurdy, this is an area where I really got inspired by you and how you kind of changed things up with your sales team. And for those that are watching, maybe you could share that a little bit because it is radically different from sort of a traditional model, right?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Obviously, with the changing industry, changing environments, the ability to make money on different products and services, offering a wide array of different services, created some unique challenges for us. Now, we're a small company, so what I'm going to share with you works well, I think, for smaller companies. I think if you have a larger company, you could create teams or pods that could do the same thing. But for us, we had sales reps. We had sales reps that were tasked with managed service sales, managed IT. We had somebody that specialized in phones. We had somebody that specialized in cloud. We had people that specialized in office equipment for the copiers and the printers. And what we found is they just weren't communicating. We tried multiple models where, the copier rep got paid on, if he brought a lead to the table for managed services or phones or cloud computing or whatever it was. But we just weren't firing on all cylinders. And so we recently set up a program and a plan where all of the sales reps now work together in conjunction. All of their sales and commissions go into one pool and are divided evenly between all of the reps. As crazy as it sounds, productivity is up, sales are up, communication's up. The biggest thing that's up, cross-selling. Cross-selling is off the charts because now people aren't like, what am I going to lose, or am I going to miss, or I have to waste my time, or whatever I have to do. Now they're working in unison, in conjunction, in a way I've never seen before, including more activity in the CRM than I've ever seen.
Wow.
Good information in the CRM, because they all have to, that's how they're all on the same page, right? But that's something that we've been doing for a little while now, and it's probably one of the best decisions we've made as it relates to compensation. The other thing that it does is it puts sales reps a little bit at ease, because people do want to go on vacation and they need their personal time, and things do happen. And sometimes you unload your pipeline and you're dry the next month and things like that. And so it brings a little bit of the stress level down so you can focus on mastering your skill as a professional sales rep, because it balances out every month. You don't have to worry if you take a week vacation that, oh man, I'm going to make less money now. So
yeah, I love
kind
it.
of a cool thing. It's unique, I think.
Yeah. And Ken, it looks like you were going to jump in there.
Well, I just had a question because I love what Mike just said. So is it company-wide? So all of your sales reps and everybody's in the same thing, or do you assign it based on, like a territory? So for all of the sales reps that sell in a territory?
Well, that's where the challenge was. We had territories in the past, and that was causing problems. So we got rid of territories and created named accounts, but that created other challenges. So we don't have territories, and it doesn't matter where it's located, in southern Idaho or northern Utah, or if it's a national company, it makes no difference. But they're all together, all of them, regardless of what their focus is. Yeah, and when you're talking about monthly recurring revenue, that starts to add up and make a big difference as well. I mean, you have different pieces of compensation because you get paid on hardware different than you're on, a copier or a printer than you are going to get paid on monthly recurring revenue from phones or cloud computing or managed services, managed IT services or whatever. And so, but that all goes into a bucket. The only caveat for us is the spiffs remain with the person that brought the deal to the table. So if we have a phone deal and you get 6 times monthly recurring revenue and you go get $1,000 deal and there's a $6,000 spiff, for example, that spiff stays with whoever brought it to the table.
I think
that doesn't go in the pool, but everything else does. Monthly recurring, one-off commissions, everything.
That's smart. I love that because it inspires teamwork on one side, and on the other side, it says we're still sales reps. How do I make more? Yeah, and those spiffs to get them there. That's great.
It makes them want to grab the stuff too. They're not walking by as much stuff either. The guy that's doing copiers, he ain't walking by phones anymore because he wants that spiff.
Yeah, well, and full respect because, like you took a chance, obviously, to start this experiment, right? And I'm happy to see it kind of going in that direction. And Michael Cozzens, I wonder if you can share, are there any experiments that you've been doing over at Visual Edge IT, kind of in the same line, kind of testing the waters with new ideas for, kind of this changing world?
Yeah, well, we have tons, just like everybody else. The last example is wonderful if you have everybody pulling in the same. Unfortunately, we've got some killer salespeople that want it all.
Yeah.
And,
You got a pretty big organization, so you got all kinds of folks.
yeah, so we have the last check we had close to 40 SMEs, and then the other 240 salespeople that can sell it all. But you tend to get people that focus in VoIP, in print, in managed reoccurring. It's kind of interesting how people go. But what we're doing right now is obviously our biggest goal is to try to see if we can't get all salespeople selling the stack that we've approved, and that's business technology solutions for the office. So we have specialty people that can help support. But we haven't gone into a zone where everybody gets into a pool of commissions. My only concern with that would be that you take some of the killer piece away from a sales. I just like when salespeople are hungry and they want the deal, but at the same time, I need them to stay engaged, even though they don't understand something or a certain part of the sales strategy. They can't just give up and turn. What we found over time is when you turn those deals over to somebody else, they don't go as well, and they go into la-la land in many cases.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep the salespeople engaged. So we're to answer your question, we've got a couple different things going on. But right now, every salesperson that finds an opportunity, to Mike's point, they do get a piece of the transaction. So they're incented to stay with it.
Yeah, I think that's the critical thing, right? Is that, we don't do anything for good feelings in the sales world. And I'm not saying it doesn't come with a deal, but I'm just really inspired by seeing how some of these experiments are, as we change what we look like, right? And I think, Mr. Cozzens, you said BTS, Business Technology Services, right? And, we're not being called dealers anymore. We had this conversation the other day in the top 100. It was BTS. What were some of the other ones? I know Mike Stramaglio with his group has a different name for it, but
we're a TSP.
Yeah.
We're a technology solutions provider.
Yeah.
Most honorable mention.
You can't use dealer anymore. I mean, it just doesn't feel the same. Doesn't work the same. So
well, because you're not, right? I mean, that's the whole idea. And when I first started working with Tiger Paw, it was kind of an eye opener for me when I was introduced to some of these other channels, because they call everything that we call completely differently, right? So they've always really been providers. That's kind of their, the word they've used in the managed IT space for a long time, right? And I'm sure, Michael, you've seen the same thing, right? That this coordination of what we actually, call the things we offer and who we are as, as people representing the technology is certainly, it's pretty funny to see that change, right? And I think challenging too, right? And maybe
one thing that's interesting, Wes, is, and it's funny because we've all been in this business a long time. When you get in the elevator and somebody says, "What do you do?" A lot of us are afraid to say we're in copiers or we're in printers or we're in IT services or whatever. So we've come up with all these very beautiful names and titles for what it is we do. For me, I will say to your question earlier, I actually really I'm probably a little bit different than others. I like sales, a sales title relative to somebody who's responsible for sales. And I'm probably I don't know if that's a popular position for some people, but we've done the same thing at Visual Edge. We've called our people now business technology advisors, BTAs. And for me, I would like to have, even if you're going to call them business tech, I'd like to see sales in there somewhere. I like the customer to see that, and I like the sales team to see that this particular person or team is in charge of sales. So for me, whatever titles we call it, whether it's on the technology side, it's solutions provide, whatever we come up with, I like it to be called sales. And as far as the dealers are concerned, you're right. Michael Stramaglio wants to change the name, and there's a lot of people that are running from the word dealer. It probably is outdated. I guess the best title for what we are right now is we're really a managed technology services provider. That's kind of what we do. So whatever acronyms we come up with, that's really what it needs to be, something along those lines.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes too, like if like we love invention, right? Because to your point, we are in sales, and part of being in sales is invention, right? That's how you get it done. But certainly like there's MSPs, managed service providers, right? There are managed IT providers and technology solutions providers. I think TSP I'm seeing in the managed IT world being used more often. And there's a great guy. I'm not sure if you've ever seen him speak out there on cybersecurity, Matt Lee.
Yeah, he's awesome. We've had him at he's great.
He's really great. And
he's lost his beard.
I know. Did you see that? He raised $100,000 for that beard.
I know. That's amazing.
Oh, so good. Yeah, he was speaking though about this whole concept of, MSSP and MSP, and he said, let's just stop for a second. He said they're MSPs. There's no such thing as an MSSP. If you're touching the equipment, you're touching the data, then you're technically both, right? We can't distinguish it anymore. So I just thought it was kind of fun to interject that. Well, and that's fun that you know him as well. He's
the one thing that the sales perspective in generality looks for high revenues, looks for strong profits, and really looks to try to dive deeper and wider into the account penetration. And that's why I like whatever the title is going to be for those guys and gals to have something to do with sales. May not be as pretty, but I think it keeps the message very clear. If you lose that message and you start having different, system support engineers, whatever these titles are, I think we lose that hunt.
I love being called a sales professional. Like I'll be, quite honest, because it is a profession. It's something that's fed my family for, at least the last 25 years in this space, right? And probably 30 years actually before that, when I was in technology sales for data centers and internet, in the early days, right? So I have no shame in calling myself a sales professional, whatever that is. And I love what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the title as long as it's somewhere in that description of their DNA, right?
Well, the only thing I ever used to get offended with is when people would call me and say that I'm a Xerox. I buy Xerox, and because that was the name they used for any copier they ever bought.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's not like Kleenex. That can get a little insulting, right? It's like I do more than sell Xerox. And Mike McCurdy, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's kind of like people are running from the title of sales and trying to find something creative, but you can't change who you are. You've got to be really careful with that. I agree 100%. And I think the reason they're doing it is kind of like when it comes down to compensation in any sales field. I don't know if this statistic is actually relevant or not, but it seems like 10% of the sales reps make 90% of the money. Right. And those 10% aren't afraid of what they do. And the reason they're not afraid is they're not salespeople, they're sales professionals. And they spend the time every day to master their craft. Yeah. 90%, in my opinion, of sales reps don't do that. And that's why they're unsuccessful, or they never get to the level of sales reps that are really capturing the kind of money that's out there, because it's really one of the only fields that you're in that you can change your income significantly. You can make as much as a doctor or as an attorney or other people if you master your craft. Problem is like, again, it's probably like anything else. Most people just aren't investing the time into it. So,
well, I tell you, as a sales professional, the one thing I loved was being able to make the kind of money that we make without all the other headaches of running the business, right? So
yeah, it is a big deal. I've been in sales my entire career, and currently at the moment, owning the company and running the company, I still spend 75% of my time selling, because that's where my value is, but it's also where my heart is.
And that doesn't make you a bad person either.
No.
I'll never wave the flag and say, man, I love running business. Man, it comes with a lot of baggage, but I love selling.
Yes.
I do love working with people, and that's why I like business and business ownership. But there's just more to it than that, So.
And I like seeing Art post comment here too, right? And Art's one of the best sales professionals that I know. He's absolutely, been such a bastion of knowledge, and he's willing to share it as a sales rep, and he's never apologized for it. So Art says, sales professional is the best. Always want to let people know I'm in sales. Love it, Art.
Yeah, I'll give one more thing that might help people on the call. When you're interviewing, one of the key questions you have to ask is, what is the last sales book you read? And then make them just sit and see them squirm. Almost everybody can't even remember the last book they read, let alone a sales book, but right there whether you've got a hot guy or not. Right there, because if they're not investing in themselves, they're going to end up mediocre.
Well, the interesting thing too is everything that all of us do for the most part is sell. we don't make anything. We're not involved in manufacturing of widgets. So, what we do is sell. And if we're not selling, the company's not growing, period. So it's something that we should all be very, very, accomplished in saying, yeah, we're in sales.
Yeah, that kind of goes into this question. It's my picture, but it's actually Ken because he's on a cruise ship and his audio is not working out so well. But
is my audio better now?
Oh yeah,
you're good.
You're clear
yeah,
too.
I moved outside and I have my phone's in my pocket. It's a little better. But the question I was trying to ask is one of the challenges I see in the traditional copier industry is so much focus on churning existing customers. And that does not drive net new growth. And for any business, what you need is net new. So how do you gentlemen structure your program to get your sales team focused on growing net new, whether it's a net new customer or just net new business from an existing customer?
Good question. Who wants to start that one?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different ways that obviously you can pay more compensation for new business versus current business. But you got to be careful with that because now you're and current business anymore with all of the competitive and the climate change with everybody doing what they're doing, try to update their technologies. You got to be careful that your people still try to get what you already have again. So we don't. I haven't seen that be very successful when you have 10% more of its new business versus current business. And then even if you do that, you have salespeople that find a way that it's new business, even though it's current business, because it's another office. So you still have to. So we just basically compensate based on the sale. Now the question is, are we compensating enough based on the sale that we seek? And do we have that margin set correctly for sales management? The engineer and the salesperson.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael, on that. But I think a lot of it comes down to 100% in all the different things we've tried over the years. The extra 10%, like you said, just isn't motivated. If somebody is not motivated to go out there and be a sales professional, it's really hard to motivate them. That being said, I think a lot of it comes down to not micromanaging, but also training. You got to be out there setting the example for your team. If you're not out there bringing net new business, they're not going to be either, probably.
I remember, and this is a while back, but I remember. Do you remember a scanning software called WaveScan?
I don't. No.
Okay, well, that was basically when you would sell a scanning solution. It was a standalone server, and you would scan all the information back on the server from the document imaging machine. Anyway, long story short, we took on that product mix, and my sales team in Miami that's all they sold. They stopped selling copiers. They stopped selling everything else because they were so excited about that sale. The point I'm making is once we pushed the sale to document scanning, we lost that double and single and triples that was putting the revenue on the board, making the manufacturers happy so I could make my rebates and everything else. So the point is the compensation programs that you have obviously have to keep the current initiatives in play as well. So you can't just hit buttons because your salespeople could. And the other thing too is it turns a sales cycle from, a week or 2 weeks or 30. Imagine this, if you converted all of your imaging salespeople to IT selling right now, where the sales cycle might be, 90 days, 120 days. I mean, you're gonna be some cash flow problems
and some employment problems.
That's right.
You can't really mingle them. It's very difficult to do.
Well, and that's probably a good segue to Ken's next question there, which is, obviously compensation is one thing. That's a good way to keep people, but what else do we have to do to, retain employees? Is it more than compensation?
But I think you have to be creative, but I think the other thing that you have to do is be realistic. One of the things I struggle with, I just saw an ad the other day from one of the largest manufacturers or one of the largest, I'm going to call them dealers in the industry, in a rural community, stating that where they're brand new, stating that compensation starts at $100,000. It's just unrealistic. There are certain markets you could do that in, and yes, you can make incredible money. selling anything, including the services and the products that we offer. But I think there's too much unrealistic expectations when you're bringing people in. And if you're not careful, they get discouraged because they were kind of told one thing, but then they experience something different. And it's, unless you hit that guy that has truly mastered the art and the craft of selling, the average rep in a rural market is going to make more money than they've probably made doing anything else if done right. But they might not be making 6 digits, and they might not be making 6 digits for a while, because depending on where you're at, if you go to work for an existing deal and they got lots of rollovers,
Right.
okay, all day long. But when you're in a company that's new to a market and it's net new business, you got to be more honest and realistic with people. Otherwise, you're going to lose them, and they're going to flip, and they're going to get discouraged, and they're going to ask why and how come it's not turning out the way that you told me it was going to be, and things like that. And that's challenging, because I think as the copier industry has changed, copier dealerships have continued to overstate what can actually happen for a sales rep, knowing full well that less than 10% of them achieve that.
Yeah.
And I think people need to be a little bit more honest and a little bit more realistic. Number one. Number two, I think people have to be open and candid about what they actually get paid on. In our dealership, I don't go and manipulate things and then give the sales rep a sales rep price that has a massive pad in it. My reps know my raw cost. They know what I need for my piece. They add that piece into it, and they get paid on everything else over that. And it's easy if you're not careful, and it can be a little deceitful if you say, oh, well, I pay 45% commission or 50% commission, but it's on such a much smaller number that you've got to, I think when you bring in a sales rep to keep them, you got to also show them how the compensation works and what it actually looks like, and not just use general numbers. I think that's an area where the office equipment industry has been failing sales reps the last 5 to 10 years, is they just have not provided realistic expectations on compensation.
Yeah. What do they say? It's churn and burn, right? Where there is that sense, in the marketplace where it's like you're going to have a few that'll rise to the top and others that don't.
Well, there are some office equipment dealerships that want that churn. Some of them want a 40% churn. They feel like that's good for them. I don't think that's the majority of us, but there are some that actually want that. And so it makes sense, I guess, in that scenario.
Yeah. As a sales rep, I can tell you that one of the other things that really helped me as far as retention, like keeping me in the business at all, was good mentorship, right? And that came from a variety of people, but some of them were top sellers. Those are always the one that I sought out, right? To learn from them. How does this work? Like, I'm new here, so I'm a good student and I want to get aggressive and get out there and sell. So help me to understand what it's going to take, right?
You'd have to provide the tools for them. They're not going to go find it on their own most times. There's a select few people that will, but most people, you've got to provide the tools and show them where to get the information that will help them become better at what they do.
Yeah, sales professionals, right? Because there is an art to this. There is training, that people can do that. I think part of it, though, when I got into sales initially, I'd already done sort of soft sales before that, right? In university, I was a waiter and a maitre d'. So I knew early on that if there was a special, for example, right, that the kitchen was trying to push out, they said, Wes, for every special that you can, push out, they're going to give you an extra $5, right? And so I wouldn't just read the special off the list. I was taught by the owner to really get into it, saying, oh, you're not going to believe this, right? But the tuna that we have right now is fresh caught, natural. It's only sold actually in 3 countries, and we're lucky enough to have it on the special tonight. If you don't like it, the kitchen says they'll give you your money back, but I can't say enough about this meal, right? And meaning it, because I love tuna, but nonetheless, it's those kind of things that some people that get into sales initially maybe don't have that experience of selling something, right? So how do you get them motivated? And I think what you say is the honesty, right? It's going to be hard. Here's how you can do it. And here's some folks that are just knocking it out of the park, right? What about you, Michael Cozzens?
Yeah, this is something that's really, we could spend weeks on this because it's profound. In my opinion, I think I agree with the previous comments, but I will tell you, I really got to know the salesperson and what triggers each and every one of those salespeople. For some salespeople, it's notoriety.
Yeah.
they want to see their name in lights and in an award more than they do. I know this is hard for people to understand. Some very good salespeople that I've run into in the last 30 or 40 years, they're more interested in an award than they are that you paid them $50,000 more or whatever. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. So you got to know your sales people. You got to know what triggers them. In some salespeople, I've met some great salespeople that are specific to nonprofit organizations, and they want to be involved and they want the company to support that. Some salespeople want their titles to be, director of sales, account management, as opposed to just being a, sales rep or whatever. So the point is, I think it goes back to the hiring, which is what he was talking about. You gotta, when we hire people, we really need to take that extra time and find out what are their key points. And I'm talking about salespeople. I'm not talking about people who think they want to be in sales. You should find that out in your sales interview process anyway. You should know really what your people, what their aspirations are. So my point would be, we really need to understand what triggers each and every salesperson to make sure that we're achieving those goals. If it's an award or an award scenario and we're not participating in that, we're going to lose that guy or that gal.
Yeah, I see Art posted, put a comment in there, right, about President's Club, right? That's another one, that is there, right?
Yep.
And to your point, everyone's a different animal. For myself personally, as a seller, I'm very motivated by actually helping people, right? So when I sell something that actually delivers on a solution, that for me, that meaning in that sale is actually really important. And I've been lucky enough that it's actually worked out to help on the revenue side as well. Right?
I have a broad perspective of two things that I would add, Wes. One is when I was with the manufacturer, when I was with Kyocera, I would see dealers spend $1 million to make a trip to Switzerland. And I know people are like, are you serious? Yeah, the dealers would literally put in orders to make this trip because they wanted to be participating in that annual dealer trip. So for that particular scenario, the dealers are, they're motivated by winning a trip. I've seen salespeople that worked either for me at the manufacturer or with my company that would, they would, kill the dog, but they would do anything possible to win the annual president's trip. And by the time I sold my company 7 years ago, the dealer annual trips the president's trip that I was taking my people on was costing me almost $200,000 a year. And I was taking 30 people, but they would knock down doors to make their numbers and get. So again, it depends on what now you say that what I just told to a lot of people and they go, oh yeah, I'd never spend that kind of money. We're going to go for the weekend to the.
Hey, some of the best travel I've ever done was through President's Clubs, right? Like
That's right.
It does motivate. And like I said, I'll bring Art's comment back up here. Where did he put it? He mentioned it too, right? So quite a net to make President's Club. And Art, I know you've been there a lot of times in your career, right? Art also comes in with this desire. You can't teach desire to salespeople.
Correct.
You have to figure out who has desire, and that's a really good point. And listen, in respect for everyone's time today, I do want to make sure we cycle this down and let everyone get back to closing out an awesome December for anyone that's on calendar year end. I know it's a busy time. And
thank God you didn't reference November, Wes.
Yeah. No, we did that earlier. Yeah, before you came in.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Yeah, but definitely December from everyone I've been speaking to looks like it's going to be a banner month. So wishing both the Michaels a great year end, and cannot thank you enough for taking the time to help other people with their sales craft.
Pleasure.
Yep, you bet.
And for everyone else out there that took the time out of their day to tune in, either if you're watching us live or finding us now on both YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook after the event, want to thank you. And until next time, keep selling and keep learning.
See you guys.
See you guys. Take care.